Please, hurry up and get discharged from the hospital, okay? Who's going to take care of Mom while you're not here? Edward said to me as I lay on the hospital bed. I've had enough. I'm not living just to take care of her. My name is Kimberly, and I'm 32 years old. I've been married to Edward for 3 years now. After graduating from vocational school, I worked as a nurse in a hospital. The irregular working hours, demanding patience, and physically taxing nature of the job were tough. But still, being involved in saving people's lives was rewarding. I was busy, but living a fulfilling life. I met Edward at a party I was invited to by a friend 4 years ago. Though there are some nurses who end up marrying doctors from the same hospital, it's generally a female-dominated workplace. So for nurses, parties are a common way to meet people. We just happened to sit next to each other and got close as we talked. We clicked and exchanged contact information that very day. From there, things moved quickly. We started messaging each other, went on several dates, and naturally became a couple. Edward and I share hobbies like reading and watching movies. Most of our dates were spent relaxing at home. We didn't have incredibly exciting conversations, but we enjoyed reading our favorite books together. I found that atmosphere very comforting, and I think Edward did too. Less than a year into our relationship. "Aren't you going to get married?" he proposed. The setting was Edward's house, after we had dinner together. Sitting across from each other at the dining table, Edward unexpectedly popped the question. I was so happy with the casual way he asked, and I knew that if I was going to get married, it had to be with him. I would be honored. So I said. Once we were finally engaged, we decided to have a family meeting. Edward and I had another thing in common besides our hobbies. Both of us had only one parent. My parents divorced when I was little. I never really knew the details of why my mom divorced, but despite being a woman alone, she raised me until I became an adult. I'm forever grateful to my mom. However, the small sense of inferiority from not having a father always lingered in my heart. Perhaps that was one reason I decided to marry Edward. I deeply longed for a family where nothing was missing. When I told my mom about getting married, she was overjoyed. Edward's parents had also divorced when he was in middle school. The first time I met my mother-in-law, Sabrina, I was quite nervous, but she warmly said, "You're Kimberly, right? Please take care of Edward." Sabrina easily accepted our relationship. Above all, she seemed genuinely kind, which put me at ease. I felt so happy and reassured. I thought I was one step closer to my dream family. Or so I believed then. At this time, for a while after getting married, life was blissful. I continued working after marriage, and our life felt just like before when we practically lived together. Edward and I enjoyed our calm and comforting routine. We mostly relaxed at home during weekends, occasionally going out shopping. Our pace was unhurried, almost old-fashioned. I imagined once we had kids, this would change, but for now, we enjoyed our laid-back life together. However, 2 years into our marriage, Edward approached me with something. "The thing is, my mom has always had back issues, but they've gotten significantly worse lately. Living alone seems to be getting tough for her. She's expressing a desire to live with us." "She wants to live with us? Sabrina does?" "Yeah, she says it's hard even to go to the hospital alone." "But I work during the day, and sometimes I have night shifts. Even if she moves in, wouldn't her situation remain pretty much unchanged?" "That's why I wanted to discuss something with you." Edward hesitated before continuing. "Could you consider quitting your job? I got a raise recently, and with my mom's pension contributing half for rent, I believe it'll be enough for the 3 of us." "But, please, I promise to handle our finances well. You mentioned before about wanting to be a homemaker when we have kids. I'm asking for my mom. Please." It's hard to resist such a plea. If I refused, it would seem as if I was dismissing Sabrina. I felt I had no choice but to agree. Of course, I didn't want to quit my job, but more than that, I didn't want to disrupt the life Edward and I had together. But thinking of my own mom, I knew I'd want to help her if she were in need. I decided to quit my job and live with Sabrina. Originally, Sabrina and I only met a few times a year. Like Edward, she wasn't one for unnecessary chatter or engaging in lengthy conversations. However, she was considerate, and I wasn't too worried about that. I thought we could make it work. Once I was ready, Sabrina immediately moved out of her apartment and came to live with us in our condo, bringing along her few belongings. This marked the beginning of our hellish cohabitation, with me quitting my job to become a homemaker and living with Sabrina. At first, Sabrina was somewhat reserved, but that lasted only a few weeks. She soon revealed her true colors. "Kimberly, I want to go to the hospital. Can you drive me?" Sabrina had hospital appointments twice a week. The frequency wasn't the issue. It was the distance to the hospital that was the problem. The drive was nearly an hour each way. After driving her there, I couldn't leave because I would have to wait for her appointment to finish. I would just sit in the car, waiting. When the appointment was over, she would get in the car, and without a word of thanks or even apology for the wait, she would say, "Let's go." Not a single word to thank you for keeping me waiting. She sat in the back seat like she was some company executive or a congressperson. When did I become Sabrina's personal staff, her private driver? And that's not all. She even complained about the music I played in the car. "The music you play is barbaric. It's driving me crazy. What is this? It's unbearable. Turn it off right now. I brought a CD today, so play this instead." And out comes a top 10 oldies CD. I'm fully aware that there are good oldies songs, but listening to them on repeat was driving me insane. After the 2-hour round trip, by the time we got home, it was already evening. Without a break, I had to start preparing dinner, cleaning the bathroom, and folding the laundry. All the while, Sabrina, claiming back pain as an excuse, didn't lift a finger to help. Instead, she would be in her room, watching TV and laughing out loud. Edward had been promoted, which was great, but it also meant more work and responsibility for him, and he often had to work late. This meant that most dinners were just Sabrina and me. But Sabrina is a picky eater. She can't eat meat at all, and she's picky about vegetables too. I always had to take her likes and dislikes into account when planning the menu for dinner, which turned out to be more of a hassle than I thought. Edward and I aren't picky eaters, and we both love meat. So, when we wanted to have a meat dish, we had to change the menu to accommodate Sabrina. In effect, I had to prepare 2 different dinners, which cost more in terms of both ingredients and time. And Sabrina was picky about seasoning too. "What is this? It has no taste. Make it stronger." This happened on a regular basis. And after dinner, without lifting a finger to help with the dishes, she would go back to her room to watch TV and laugh. Later, when I had finally finished cleaning up and was about to take a break, she would tell me to prepare her shower. She could have done that herself, I thought, as I went to prepare her shower. And sometimes, from the shower room, I would hear, "Kimberly? Kimberly!" Rushing over, thinking something was wrong, she would say, "What's this? The water is lukewarm. Are you trying to freeze me to death?" I've never heard of anyone freezing to death in a shower room. How inconsiderate! While listening to Sabrina's yelling, a sharp pain shot through my stomach. Is this the relationship between a daughter-in-law and Sabrina? I thought about consulting Edward, asking him to do something about it, but... "Sorry, but please bear with it. Mom must be stressed out and wants to vent," he said, brushing off my concerns and doing nothing to help. Recently, the thought of divorce had crossed my mind more and more. But since I quit my job, I don't have my own bank account. I have no money to spend freely, and the anxiety of not finding a job right away after divorcing made it difficult to make up my mind. The harassment from Sabrina got worse day by day. If the car shook even a little, "Drive more gently, it's dangerous." If I accidentally served something Sabrina didn't like, "Are you embarrassing me on purpose because you know I can't eat this? Make it again. If you don't have the ingredients, go buy them." Reluctantly, I went to the supermarket, bought new ingredients, and made the meal again, only for her to say, "This is disgusting. I can't eat it." And with that, she would take the plates straight to the kitchen and deliberately throw away the food I made. Each time she did that, a sharp pain would shoot through my stomach. By this point, just seeing Sabrina's face would make my stomach hurt. Even if I consulted Edward, his response was always the same. He just kept telling me to bear with it. In the end, Edward cared more about his mom than his wife. Honestly, I was becoming just as intolerant of Edward's attitude as I was of Sabrina's. The holidays we used to spend leisurely together were now spent with Edward locking himself in his room and Sabrina locking herself in hers, leaving me alone in the living room, busy with housework. I missed the days when it was just Edward and me. Now those peaceful times are gone. What did I get married for? And then one day, my body reached its limit. One morning, after seeing Edward off, I stood in the kitchen to prepare Sabrina's breakfast when a pain I had never felt before attacked me. Being a former medical professional, I knew immediately that something was wrong. Bearing the unbearable pain, I called an ambulance myself. Sabrina just looked on with disinterest. The doctor diagnosed me with stress-induced gastric ulcer. No wonder it hurt. Apparently, I need to be hospitalized for about 2 weeks. When I called my mom, she came right away, even though she was far away. Seeing my mom for the first time in a while, tears overflowed. I told her everything. About Edward, about Sabrina. She just listened kindly, and my heart felt much lighter. In the end, Edward and Sabrina didn't even come to the hospital that day. Only my mom stayed by my side. The next day at noon, Edward finally showed up. What showed on his face was not concern for me, but rather fatigue. The first words out of his mouth were, "When can you be discharged?" Is that really the first thing you're going to ask? I was terribly disappointed. I couldn't forget the life we had before Sabrina came, and it seems I still had expectations for Edward. But with Edward's words, my last glimmer of hope was extinguished. Edward continued, "Please, just get discharged soon. Is it really necessary to be hospitalized for just an ulcer? It's an overreaction. Who's going to handle the housework and take care of Mom while you're gone?" As Edward rapidly spoke, I felt my heart growing cold. He said what he wanted, then promptly left. Once I'm discharged, it's back to that life, isn't it? The thought made my stomach hurt again. With Edward gone and alone in my hospital room, my resolution strengthened. 2 weeks later, my condition was stable, and I was ready to be discharged. During my stay, Mom visited several times, kindly taking care of my needs. Edward only came twice, asking each time, "When are you getting out?" That was all he seemed to care about. His attitude made me wish he wouldn't visit anymore. At least he came to pick me up on the day of my discharge. In Edward's car, I returned home for the first time in a while. "Kimberly, I'm counting on you again. Take it easy since you just got out." "For what?" "You know, house chores and looking after Mom." "Right." Once we arrived home, Sabrina was waiting as if she expected us. "You're finally back? While you were gone, Edward took care of everything, so you better show some gratitude. You'll have to work a lot to make up for your rest." There was no hint of concern for my health in Sabrina's demeanor. On the contrary, I could clearly see her intent to make my life even more miserable than before. "That's right. After all, you didn't need to be hospitalized for just an ulcer. You've had enough rest, so you better get back to work." Edward looked just as sinister. Neither of them had any intention of celebrating my discharge. Moreover, they didn't even care about why my ulcer had become so severe in the first place. Soon, I was back to my old routine, driving Sabrina around, preparing meals, cleaning the bath, doing the laundry, and enduring Sabrina's torment. In no time, I was back in the depths of this hell, but I didn't let Sabrina's antics bother me as much. Unbeknownst to them, I had been secretly planning something during this time. And just when my plans were about to come to fruition, another incident occurred. Sabrina fell at home and had to be rushed to the hospital. The doctor said, "She's not in a life-threatening condition, but she injured her chronic back condition when she fell. She likely won't be able to walk on her own again. Please prepare for a life in a wheelchair." That's what he said. Sabrina was going to be hospitalized for a while. Edward and I silently returned home. Sitting across from each other at the table, Edward began. "You understand, right? Mom's become dependent. She'll need help with meals, bathing, and possibly even sleeping. I'm counting on you to care for her." I had anticipated Edward saying something like this. I wasn't surprised, nor was I disappointed anymore. I replied calmly, "I'm sorry, but I have no intention of taking care of Sabrina." "What are you saying? If you don't do it, who will? It's your responsibility." "No, I've had enough of taking care of her." Edward was determined to push the caregiving responsibility onto me. My answer took him by surprise initially, but gradually his expression turned to anger. He yelled at me, "If you really hate it that much, it's divorce! Divorce! Get out! What are you going to do? Choose between caregiving and divorce." I nodded strongly, as if I had been waiting for him to say that. "All right then, divorce it is." "What did you just say? Are you serious? You have no money, no job, and no house. What are you going to do when you leave here, huh? What are you going to do? Tell me." Edward was still acting all high and mighty, but I could tell that deep down he was truly shocked. "Well, that's tough, but it's better than being here. So will you sign this for me?" With that, I handed Edward the divorce papers, which I had already signed. "Whoa, wait a minute. Are you really going to go through with the divorce? Don't act tough. Where are you going to go?" "Anywhere is fine. Now will you hurry up and sign the divorce papers? You are the one who brought it up after all." Edward was panicking. But since he was the one who brought it up, he had no choice but to sign the divorce papers. I snatched the papers from him and headed towards the entrance. After putting on my shoes, I turned to Edward and told him, "Just like you said, I didn't have money, a job, or a house before. But did you notice? While I was hospitalized, Mom came to visit me all the time." "Yeah, I guess so." "Mom listened to my story and offered to help. You didn't know, did you? My mom is the head nurse at a local state university hospital." "What?" "And since Mom has a lot of connections, she quickly reached out to her acquaintances when I told her I was looking for a job. I really owe Mom a lot for helping me out this time. She introduced me to a job and even lent me the initial cost for renting an apartment." Edward seemed to have realized too late that he was being left behind. He glared at me with resentment. Just then, my mobile phone rang. It was a call from Sabrina. "Kimberly, bring the things to the hospital." Sabrina was apparently still planning on bossing me around, even from the hospital, but that wasn't going to happen. "Sabrina! Oh wait, I mean, ex-husband Sabrina. Sorry." "What?" "I just had Edward sign the divorce papers, so you and I are now strangers. So could you please ask Edward for favors instead?" "What the hell? I didn't agree to any divorce. This is a joke, right? Bring the things now." I took a deep breath and yelled back at her, "Shut up! I'm telling you, I don't want to take care of you anymore. If you want someone to take care of you, ask your dear son. Sabrina was taken aback for a moment on the other end of the line, but she had more guts than Edward. She screamed back at me. I ignored her and hung up the phone. And then I blocked her number. So, with that said, goodbye. Take care of it yourself. Wait, there's no way I can take care of Mom. Please, Kimberly. I'm sorry. Goodbye. With those words, I closed the front door and left the house. Suddenly, I felt lighter. When I looked up, the stars were twinkling, as if to celebrate my new beginning. The next day, I promptly filed for divorce at the city hall, and it was granted. I consulted with my lawyer, and we were able to establish that the emotional harassment by Sabrina and Edward was grounds for a divorce. We also filed for compensation. I started my new life in a rented apartment that I had arranged beforehand. I got a job as a nurse at a hospital, introduced to me by my mom. I realized once again how important it is to have a skill in hand. I am grateful to my mom, who, despite being a woman alone, sent me to vocational school. Returning to society made me a bit anxious, but it was a piece of cake compared to living with Sabrina. I can't thank my mom enough for all the trouble I've caused her. Once things settle down, I'll take her on a trip. Time flew by as I got busy with work, and before I knew it, months had passed since the divorce. Then one day, I received a call from Edward while I was at work. Kimberly, long time no see. How have you been? Actually, I need your help. I'm going to be hospitalized. I've been feeling tired from caregiving, and my stomach has been hurting. When I went to the hospital, the doctor recommended that I be admitted. So, could you help me with things around here? I'm asking you, please. What are you talking about? I'll return the words you said to me before. Just because your stomach hurts doesn't mean you should indulge yourself and be hospitalized. There's no need for that. I was wrong. I was a fool back then. I've reflected on my actions. I finally understand how you felt back then. I'm really sorry, okay? Mom has decided to enter a facility. So what do you say we live together like we used to? Taking it easy? No, thank you. I'm busy. And if you want to talk to me, pay the compensation you owe me first. With that, Edward was left speechless, and I hung up the phone. There's no way I would consider reconciling, but I can understand how living with Sabrina could give him a stomach ulcer. I don't want to become like them, so maybe I'll send him some flowers. With that thought, I searched for a nearby florist on my mobile phone and went back to work.